Hello, everyone. Bill Hood here with Velocity Group. Welcome to Live with Lauren, where I hate to disappoint all you, but Lauren's unavailable this evening. So what I thought I would do is I would jump on here and hit a couple topics that I know a lot of people are concerned about, or maybe because of their safety manager, or they just don't understand certain things that they really don't work on. So we're going to talk about a few things here. We're going to talk about personal conveyance. That's probably the number one area that the DOT is looking for when they're doing roadside inspections on your logs. That's the number one area that drivers are doing falsification of log, which is 7 points, and an out of service, that's 9 points right there. And then when you look at as far as, from a CSA and multiplier, you're looking at 27, 18, and 9 when you, as far as writes down. We'll talk a little bit about that later as well. We're going to talk about the split sleeper berth. This is something that is not being used by people and is being widely, this is a massive one where people, they talk about their inflexibility hours. And if you know how to do this will take your planning and scheduling to a whole new level and reduce as far as potential hours of service violation and increase your profitability. It's one of those areas that you have to be an expert on these days. And if you're an owner operator without your own authority driving for a carrier, the safety manager doesn't allow split sleeper berth, you need to be looking for a different carrier because they are severely impacting your profitability. And then we're going to talk about CSA points, of course, and what's happening out there and some of the things to take a look at CSA points. And then, of course, taking your questions as we normally do. So chime in here as you jump on. Let us know you're there. I'm solo here tonight. There's a couple things that are going on here right now. Number one is we actually made an upgrade as far as we switching over to Chromebooks. Lauren had a computer issue last week, so we decided to try Chromebook. We loved it. I went ahead and upgraded my computer Chromebook. Of course, in that process, I had a couple things not show. Actually, they did show up, but they're not available to me yet as far as like we're going to try to get the monitor splits and things like that. So I'm really working off of one screen here. Let me kind of see if I can turn some of the light down here a little bit so it's not quite so bright. There we go. So yeah, a lot been going on here. So we're going to start out as far as with CSA points, because this is probably the biggest thing, and there's other things in the other areas where we talk about personal conveyance and split sleeper berth that plays into this. So starting out there with personal or CSA points. First off, as a carrier with your CSA points, everybody needs to understand that there's a multiplier. So in the first 6 months that you get a violation, what happens is you have a 3 times multiplier. So a falsification of log violation, right? So your driver comes in, gets a 395E falsification of log, and what you're going to see as far as with that is that 7 points plus 2 for being likely going to be put out of service, and that's going to be pretty much rate you down to a 9. An 18 or a 7 as far as the points as they rate down from the first 6 months, you're going to get 27 points with the 3 times multiplier. From month 7 to month 12, you're going to get 18 points with a 2-time multiplier. And then for basically the last 12 months, 13 through 24, you're going to get 9 points. And that's with everything that you have to do there. So it's really important that you understand how that works and what are the things you can do to help mitigate some of those issues. The big one that I see that people don't do is every ticket that you get, you need to make sure that you're fighting. Okay, so we see people out there that are just going to let tickets go, and something like a cell phone violation, right? Talking on your cell phone while you're driving, that's a 10-point violation, right? So that's 30, 20, 10. On your scores, right? Or texting, it's still a 30, 20, 10 when you're looking at your CSA points. Now, if you go into court and you fight that, and that gets moved down to let's say a littering violation. Okay, so that gets moved to a littering violation. Well, while there's no CSA points or a littering violation, when you data queue something and it's been reduced, so that there's two stages here, data queue, right? There's, if you data queue, if you get a ticket and you get it dismissed, all CSA points are eliminated. It doesn't even go to the state. It's, you send it in, hey, this violation has been dismissed by the courts, CSA points eliminated. It's still going to show on your score, that violation is still going to show there, but there's going to be 0 points, right? We're talking about the CSA game here, folks, all right? Don't worry about right or wrong or any of that stuff, or what we should do. What we're trying to do is we're trying to keep our CSA points as low as possible, because that's going to help impact profitability, because it's going to help you keep your insurance rates down. So a dismissed ticket takes you to 0 points. A reduced ticket, so a cell phone violation going from 30, 20, 10 is going, and we reduce it to, let's say, littering, it's going to reduce it to 1 point. So any reduction in ticket where it doesn't get dismissed is going to reduce it automatically down to 1 point, regardless what it's reduced to. Okay. So what would you rather have, 30, 20, 10 or 3, 2, 1 as far as CSA points? It's kind of a no-brainer at that point. So that's probably the biggest thing we see out there, is people not fighting their tickets. The other piece on it is people not completely understanding what can be out there. There's a lot of mistakes. I mean, we've seen the big green book, right? There's a lot of regulations and laws, and many of them contradict each other, and they're not completely understand. Here's a great one: masking. All right. So what is masking? Because it's one of those things that's out there right now. So masking is, and the key here, let me, I got this on my screen here to show you. So what we're talking about with masking is a state must not basically remove a ticket if somebody, basically if they come back and there's a conviction. So a lot of times what will happen is a state will turn around and you plead guilty to a violation, and they say, all right, you know what, if you don't get this violation, so we'll talk about a cell phone violation, right? A texting violation. If you don't get another texting violation in the next 12 months, what we'll do is we'll basically put this away. So you plead guilty to it, and you go into a program, and then they hide it. That's called masking. You pled guilty to it, and it's called masking. It's not allowed. You're not going to get it. So the big thing here is the conviction on this, right? So what's happening right now, and it's actually in the Indiana State Supreme Court right now, is looking at this, where the state of Indiana forgets that one important word: guilty, pleading guilty. You're being convicted of a penalty. So Indiana takes a look at it right now, where what they'll say is, if you come in and you say, hey, you know what, I got this ticket reduced to a littering violation, they say, oh, sorry, you can't do that. That's masking. Well, no, I didn't plead guilty to talking on the cell phone. I pled guilty to littering. That's not masking. If I pled guilty to the cell phone and entered into a program to help to get it reduced from my driving record, that would be considered masking if they were to try to take that away. So right now it's been taken to the being fought by an expert in the compliance side, and knows quite a bit about this, fighting this on the Supreme Court or Indiana Supreme Court, to say, basically his spin around is, what you're doing is you're actually masking. You're masking the actual violation from what's going on there. So it'll be interesting to see how that comes out. It's from the legal people, it looks like that's going to be turned around. But the key here is never plead guilty. Go through and try to get it reduced as far as what you're going to do, as far as what you're doing with the ticket. Because what that will do is, it's at a minimum, it's going to take you to 3, 2, 1, or it's going to take you to a 0 if you can get it dismissed completely. So that's one of the keys you want to take a look at when you're talking about your CSA points and what's going on there. So let's talk a little bit about personal conveyance here. So as we said, there's a lot of people out there that are working on the personal conveyance side of things, and they're really not doing it properly. So when we talk about that, is One area that people need to understand as far as personal conveyance and is being used, and I'm not talking about the people who completely do the falsification of log thing. They're running out of hours and they click over to personal conveyance and they say, hey, you know what? I got the next hour and a half. I'm going to go find, or even the next minute, I'm going to go find a safe haven, right? Which isn't even in the regulations as far as safe haven, but they're going to go try to find a location to park. Poor planning is not an excuse or allows you to use personal conveyance. And the guidance has been pretty clear on that, and people have a misconception on what they're doing and how they can use personal conveyance. So I'm talking about that there's people who do not understand. For example, they finish up at a receiver and they go on PC and they drive home, right? That's something that we see happen quite a bit. The way the regulations and the way I shouldn't say the regulations, the way the guidance is written is you can use personal conveyance if you're coming from a terminal and going home and coming from home to a terminal. That's the proper use of personal conveyance. A shipper and a receiver is not a terminal. The best way to think about this is if you were at your terminal, there's a possibility you're going to have a car there. So you would not have to log if you got into your car and you drove home. So if you're in your personal truck vehicle and you're driving home, that's a acceptable use of personal conveyance. You're not going to have, or likely not going to have, your vehicle at a shipper or a receiver's facility that's going to allow you to drive home. So those are two distinctions there, and things you need to understand as far as what you're doing there. What is the definition of where you're at as far as personal conveyance and what you're doing? So these are things that as you're out there as a carrier and someone who's running, you need to make sure you understand this, because you can use it to your advantage, or what you can do is you can get yourself into a situation. An hour of improper use of personal conveyance, or a minute, is still falsification of log as far as when it comes down to it, how the DOT can take a look at it. And 7 points, or what are we, where are we at here? You're looking at 21-14-7 and possibly out of service. So you're looking at 28-18-9 as far as the points on there, even for a minute of using personal conveyance that isn't allowed or isn't appropriate out there. So you need to make sure that you really understand how you can use personal conveyance and make sure you become an expert on it. And that takes me to the next area where a lot of people are not really taking a look at what they're doing. And that has to do with split sleeper berth. This is the big one out there, folks. This is the one where people really don't understand what they're doing, so they don't use it because they're afraid of it and they don't understand it. And a great example of, I'm going to give you kind of a high level example, and you need to dig in and learn how to use this so you can capitalize this. So you get to a shipper, okay? And let's say you're going to be there, you end up being there for 3 or 4 hours. Well, you put yourself into the sleeper berth. You're in the sleeper berth for 2 hours. You're not on a commercial highway. So when they, let's say, call you and say, hey, you know what, time to get into a door or whatever you need to do, you move yourself onto yard move and you get yourself in the door. You log as far as, and you go and you log in as far as on duty, not driving, as far as getting set up. And then you go back, let's say maybe back into sleep work. Now you've gone back on duty when you did that yard move, but if you've been over 2 hours before you moved and you had any on duty status, you've got the first 2 hours there. You get done at that receiver, right? They get you unloaded. You go on personal conveyance and you get yourself to the nearest truck stop that you go into. Now you take your 8-hour break and you've got your full 10 hours. So here's a great way. That's a great example of how you can use personal conveyance, yard move, and the split sleeper berth to maximize your hours. So that time that you're sitting at the shipper or receiver can actually be time to help you maximize your hours in what you're doing, so you don't have the you can use that split sleeper berth legally. Dig into it, understand the split sleeper berth as much as you possibly can. One last thing here. This is February 2020 that we're doing this show here right now, and the UCR has opened. You have till May 31st to be in compliance. If you're a 1 to 2 truck operation, it's $59, or with the fees, it's like $60.62, I think, is what it comes down to once you have the processing fees into it. So remember, that's opened up, and you need to be in compliance with that. If you have any questions or anything, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. We're happy here to help. And next week, we look forward to having Lauren back here. Thank you, everyone.